Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post a quick video here. This is actually a response to AJ, his 100 subscribers contest. Of course, first and foremost, congrats AJ on the 100 subs. I've been more than happy to have been one of those for quite some time now. I like your collection. You know, we agree on a lot of taste in music and stuff like that. I hate who you rooted for in the NBA Finals, but you know, it's a whole different story. But yeah, man, congratulations, and I just want to make sure I did a response to your contest. So his contest was called Passing the Torch. And so the question he kind of asked was that, you know, if you had children and you were going to pass 5 records down to them, you know, what 5 records would you pass down to them? And so, I mean, that's kind of, you know, passing the torch. That was the idea. Now, I know he kind of mentioned this in his video a little bit as well, but, you know, there's a number of different ways you could take that question, whether you're going to pass down your most valuable records, your rarest records, or all of that, which I think he was looking for something a bit deeper than that. And the way that I took the question was, if I have 5 records or so to pass down to children I might have in the future, and if I knew for a fact, it was a given that they were going to completely take these albums in and just absorb everything out of them and really connect with what they are about, what's going on within that album and everything else, and to be a major influence on how they go forward with music. If I knew that was going to happen for a fact, which albums would I pass on to them? Okay, so of course, looking at it from that perspective, in my mind, that's not a situation where you just say, I'm going to pass my favorite metal album or my favorite this album or that, but actually albums that you think would mold or would be good to mold a mind, if you will, musically. So, as always, it was tough to narrow them down, so I got down to 8. So I kind of have 3 honorable mentions and then 5, or I just cheated again and I couldn't get below 8. So here are my 8 picks, and I'll kind of briefly explain why. First one would be Kinks' Greatest Hits. This is one that I would definitely kind of put out there. Now, the main reason why I would hand this one down, this to me is the perfect bridge between what was going on in the classic rock world and then really where a lot of things, metal and everything else, came from. So again, even though Master of Puppets is my favorite metal album, I would think that if someone truly took in the Kinks and what they were doing, their music and everything on this album, it would eventually lead them to the metal scene that I love so much. But this is, a great foundation piece to just really kind of bring in where that classic rock and that guitar distortion and all that really came into play. So, great molding album there. Next tier 2 will be Sam Magwana, the African All-Stars. And I would have to put this one in there because obviously my dad was originally from Africa, so I have a pretty strong, connection to my history there, and a lot of it revolves around African music as well. And yeah, there are just a lot of things that take place on, you'd almost even say more of a kind of a spiritual level within just the mainstream music in terms of the stuff that I experienced as a child growing up with. So I think this right here, as well as Victor Uwaifa, which I don't have any of his vinyl, but I would love to get Victor Uwaifa with song Jerome. I would love to get that on vinyl. But this would be one that would definitely be a strong connection to that part of our heritage. So it's definitely one of my favorite African albums. Next, I would have to throw in the Gospel Keynotes, Rise Again. For those of you that may not know, I think I've expressed it a number of times, I am a firm believer. I am definitely a God-fearing man. Most people don't assume that when they see, how big an Iron Maiden fan I am, or a Slayer fan, or whatever else. But again, when I'm jamming out to music, or whatever music I do jam out to, it has to bring positive things as far as the way I feel. Any music that doesn't bring that, it gets booted out of my collection. So, you know, I create my own message. I don't let other people create those messages for me, whether it's Slayer or anybody else. But the gospel keynotes rise again. When I think about my family on the American side, which is mainly from my mother, the gospel tradition and the gospel nature of a family and church-going nature of a family is huge in my lineage. I mean, going from my grandmother to uncles and cousins and everything on back, I mean, is a very significant part of their lives. And this album represents very well kind of what my family was like on that spiritual side. So this would be a great way to dive back into that part of our family history. So that's one I would certainly pass on. The next one would be the Black Crowes, Southern Harmony and Musical Companion. Now, the reason why I picked this album is because, again, I kind of thought about the album an album that again really kind of brings so much together. I mean, I've always described the Black Crowes as it's just, I mean, pure, like gritty Southern rock and roll with just so much of an R&B feel and even so much of a gospel feel. It's like there's just all these elements that they bring together in such a powerful way. And I think if someone, you know, you could choose between this or Moneymaker really, but I think I kind of go with this one. But you know, if someone really got into and understood this album and really paid attention to what's going on inside of it and really, I said, took it in, I'm sorry, I think they would have a very good model of, you know, discovering Van Halen off to this direction, or, you know, going off to, you know, who else might come up here? Like Leonard Skinner's. You know, you could definitely see that branching off from here. Even going into Taj Mahal, same thing. There's a number of elements that I've heard in different Taj Mahal records that really fit in. I'm sure they took it probably more so from him, but that really fit in on what's going on this album. So yeah, to get a real great understanding of what this album is putting out, I mean, it would definitely take you in a lot of different directions musically. So that has to be in there. I mean, history is just important. So, you know, Chuck Berry, gotta have that, the great 28's kind of his greatest hits. I don't think I have to describe, you know, this as much. I mean, yeah, you have Bo Diddley, you have, you know, you always say Elvis too was there at the beginning of kind of starting rock and roll. You know, you have Little Richard, all of that. But, you know, I would think Chuck Berry would be a good way to establish the solid history of rock and roll, where they would know kind of where it all came from and what it's all about. So I would use Chuck Berry to instill, I cannot talk tonight for anything, to instill that element in them musically. And then kind of on the same thing, in terms of instilling that history of just kind of music and where things come from and everything else, I mean, you got to get back to just like the core soul and spirit of, I mean, that old time blues and that Delta blues and so forth. I mean, you gotta have that instilled, because everything came from that. All things rock and roll came from the blues and jazz. You can't get around that. So Son House would be the one I chose. Again, I thought about Buddy Guy, and I thought about Muddy Waters, and of course Howlin' Wolf. I mean, of course, you know, there's tons you could choose from, but I think Son House really nails it. Son House takes it back to the simplicity. One man, one guitar, no backup band, no amplifiers and all of that, but really down to just the simple core of just heartfelt, down-home Delta, scare the crap out of you blues. So, yeah, so great stuff there. And again, talking about that foundation piece, you know, you got to make sure they know where jazz came from. And you know, and to kind of draw them into the jazz world, I would recommend this album, which happens to be my favorite jazz album of all time, which is A Love Supreme. And yeah, I think this is awesome because it's not only just John Coltrane's, I mean, the way he plays, just the beauty of that, but the spirit of this album really kind of brings about what jazz can do to the soul beyond just hearing the beauty of the playing. This was very, very emotionally, it's a very, very moving album. Especially, again, if you study it and get the history of where Coltrane was when he made this album, like where he was in his life and everything else, and it becomes very, very deep stuff. So if they were to completely understand this album, that would definitely be a great branch into the world of jazz and even going into soul and so forth. Last but not least, and this was kind of a weird one, but I thought it was one that was just kind of important. Houdini's Escape. I know you didn't see that one coming. But again, you know, the world of hip hop is really kind of one of those things that just branched out on its own. You know, I mean, like, you know, grunge, for example, had a very defining moment. You know, when, I guess if you say Nirvana, I mean, if Pearl Jam would have released 10 months or a year sooner, it might have been a little bit different. But for the most part, I always think about Nirvana coming on the scene as being the major change where you saw rock music just all of a sudden take this very clear, defined, that's right where it happened path. And you don't get to see that too often in music. Oftentimes it's this, you know, something starts to develop and then this underground thing starts to develop and it comes like this. And grunge and stuff, I'm sure it's underground for a point, but I just mean when Nirvana came out, it just took off and grunge just came out of nowhere to the mainstream. And I think rap and hip hop was kind of the same thing. When it came about, it was just kind of like, there's really not much going on that even resembles it. And so I think there has to be kind of just an understanding about that. I'm getting a little wordy on this, but anyway, this might be the album that I would use to give that understanding. Because I think the spirit of hip hop, kind of the party nature as opposed to the shoot 'em up bang bang stuff, the party nature is represented here. The connection to the funk nature that was initially put into hip hop is represented very well in here. So if you're listening to this and you're listening to songs like 5 Minutes of Funk and Freaks Come Out at Night and We Are Houdini and stuff like that, you're going to hear that voice box, those funky beats. And again, if you internalize it and you start to love it, that's going to take you to Roger and Zapp. It's going to take you to Midnight Star. I mean, it's going to take you back to all those funky R&B groups and kind of grow from there. So again, this would be a good foundation to have, you know, really ingrained in you musically. So anyway, there you go. Those are the picks that I would have. Like I said, only one of those albums, maybe two, are actually records I would say are my favorite of all times in those categories. But I think overall, to internalize all of that, you have a pretty good, solid foundation towards experiencing music in a great way in your life moving forward. So that's what I would pass off to my kids. Again, AJ, congratulations on the 100 subs, man. Let me know what you think, and we will talk to you soon, VC. All right, take care, guys.